Choreography, President Xi hosting a gathering of leaders that included North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin. They shared the red carpet with former Victoria Premier Dan Andrews, a photo opportunity.
There's Dan with his bosses, his communist bosses, don't you worry. He knew who his bosses were.
Bob Carr says he deliberately steered clear of.
I certainly would have avoided them.
I don't want to listen to Bob Carr, hang on. And there's an official picture. There they all are with Dan Andrews up in the top right corner. Unbelievable. See, people forget that the Labor government is communist.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has arrived in China for a week of high-level discussions. Well, joining us live is Nationals Deputy Leader and Shadow Trade and Tourism Minister Kevin Hogan. Live in Lismore, good afternoon to you, Kevin. So yes, we just heard the Prime Minister talking about China's tourism in Australia. It's growing at a faster pace than other overseas markets. He spoke about AUKUS and defence, to name a few. Did you get a chance to hear what he had said at all, and what are you making of what this trip is so far?
Look, Jenny, I only just caught the end of that press conference, but aware of some of the other commentary that's been made. But look, let me start, Jenny, by saying, look, I am happy that the Prime Minister is in China talking to the Chinese government. I mean, on tourism alone, Chinese numbers into Australia well down on pre-COVID levels, and that wasn't helped by the Labor.
I don't want to make this about Anthony Albanese, but don't forget this government's communist, China government.
PM's trip to China, all smiles today as he played the tourist at the Great Wall. Pretty good at the photo op, isn't he? Not so good standing up to Beijing on issues that matter. Joining me now, our foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan. Greg, I love this line you had the other day saying, not this trip and not at this time. Explain why the destination and the duration of the PM's trip to China right now is so problematic.
Well, Peter, it's great to be with you. I must say, the more I look at this with the cold eye of national interest, I think what on earth was going through the Prime Minister's mind to agree to a 6-day trip to China while Operation Talisman Sabre was being conducted in Australia, when the Australia-US alliance is under more strain and under more neglect from both sides, Washington and Canberra, than it's been for many, many years, at a time of acute security danger for Australia. Albanese has secured nothing in China. There's been no substance in this trip. He's got nothing out of it. He's given massive propaganda benefits to the Chinese government. He has given great leverage to the Chinese government over Australia, and he has undertaken the single longest bilateral trip to one nation in his entire prime ministership with our strategic competitor, with the nation which routinely conducts cyber espionage against us, puts our forces at risk, has an Australian citizen as a hostage. He couldn't do a day in Tokyo and a day in Seoul with our strategic partners. I think it's unfathomably stupid for Albanese to have done this. It plays to Labor legend and myth-making, but it's no good for Australia, it's no good for his government, and it's very bad for the Australia-US relationship, on which our security, incidentally, depends.
Now, the reason why I did that with Dan Andrews in China and Anthony Albanese uselessly in China is because they are communists, right? At the end of the day, they're basically run by China. You've got to understand how dangerous all this is. Now, let's go back to Dan Andrews.
It's now been 13 years since that infamous car crash involving Dan and Catherine Andrews and a young cyclist in Melbourne. The police investigation at the time supported the Andrews account of events, that the cyclist, Ryan Mullerman, had run into their vehicle. Earlier this month, the Herald Sun reported that Ryan had checked himself into a treatment centre in December to get help with psychological and other health issues, with his father saying he has never really recovered. Ryan's currently engaged in defamation action against the Andrews, who have always denied any wrongdoing. There has been ongoing interest in this case. It has never gone away. And there's now a new true crime podcast called Bike Boy that investigates the actual incident. It's over 6 episodes. I've listened to it. I love it. It's already had 200,000 downloads in just a few short weeks. It features former Senior Constable Scott Hanley, who has identified 35 procedural errors in his own investigation of the incident. These include the fact that the Andrews were not breath tested and they were allowed to drive away in the car from the scene. Joining me now is the host of the podcast, Rowan Wynn.
And remember, just look at the damage of the car. Hang on. It was pretty bad. Like the front windscreen was smashed in. The guy was. It's not funny, and yet they're denialists.
Welcome,
people.
Rowan.
Thank you, Peter.
As I said, I've listened to it. I love it. 200,000 other Australians love it too.
Yes.
In this report from a former police officer who was working in that vicinity on the day,
Yes.
I mean, the circumstances there are in itself extraordinary. He has identified about 35 places in that sequence of events
Yep.
where police did not follow normal procedure.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Take me through the top line ones there.
Well, the amazing thing is what they didn't do. There's so many things they should have done that they just didn't do. You know, they didn't close off the scene. They didn't take photographs. They didn't take measurements. They didn't breathalyse the people involved in the car, who were inside the car rather. They also didn't stop him from taking the car away. And it had a smashed windscreen and a flat tyre. You know, they didn't take a statement from Ryan. They still, to this day, have never taken a statement from Ryan, the kid who was almost killed. They've only ever taken statements from Kath and Dan. The only 2 statements they've got about the entire crash come from Kath and Dan. And interestingly, we've gone back with the investigation team and found a whole bunch of witnesses who were there on the day, who spoke to the police, who wanted to make their points and tell them what really happened in their view. Not a single statement's been taken.
That I find staggering too, because a couple of people that you interviewed in the podcast.
Do you know how hard it is to put a dent in a windscreen like that? How were they allowed to drive away? Corruption.
Either witnessed the immediate aftermath, saw what was happening in relation to the young man on the ground, made some comments, and these are obviously allegations because they're untested by the Andrews,
Yes.
but made allegations about what Daniel Andrews and his wife Catherine did in the immediate aftermath as well. None of this has been collated by the police. None of this has been tested either by police investigators or indeed a court of law.
Correct, and Scott was the person who was originally called out. Scott Hanley was called out to the crash and then turned away. And so he's come back sort of all these years later on to help the family as a private investigator and gone through the evidence, and he's just been blown away by it, as have we all, as we go through it all.
And police officers that I've spoken to also say the removal of the vehicle is extraordinary because that all occurred at the time that Ryan Muehlman was being airlifted to hospital in a critical condition. And of course, if he had died as a result of this accident, it would have been manslaughter, culpable driving sort of gravity.
Within 30 days, it would have been part of the road toll, and they would have been off to the coroner's court, and the coroner would have said, well, what did you do at the crash site? So I think there was some very nervous people after the crash because none of that stuff had been done. And the only photos that were taken of the vehicle were taken after Andrews had driven the car back to the beach house they were renting in Ridley Street there, down in Blairgowrie, and there's just 2 very...
Look at the extent of the damage. How was that car allowed to drive off? Corruption.
sort of grainy photos that were taken by one of the officers that were never meant to see the light of day, I suspect.
One of the other things I find interesting too, that there was a significant passage of time, 6.5 minutes or something, between the collision, and these again are allegations, between the collision and the ambulance being called, and that it's alleged Daniel Andrews also made a series of other calls in and around the aftermath of an accident where the kid's lying on the ground to his own staff, including his chief of staff, who has a very interesting history of his own.
He does. Well, the calls to Chris Riley and also to Brett Curran, I think, are quite interesting. And they're the ones that the police investigators that are working for the family are most concerned about. Because they're saying, why are you involving senior police? And why are you doing things like trying to get a new windscreen while Ryan's still lying on the road, dying, trying to fight for his life?
Hang on.
Because he was covering up. He was covering up what he did.
And that to my viewers.
So we've now got emails and phone records that show that whilst Ryan is still on the road, yet to be put into the ambulance, They're actually on the phone. Andrew's on the phone to Chris Riley, and then Chris Riley tries to get through the insurers, the Victorian government insurers, a new windscreen. He's told he can't have one, so he brings the windscreen to O'Brien. Now, this is while Ryan is still lying on the road fighting for his life, which I think is extraordinary.
This is not Daniel Andrews, of course. This is his staff are doing this, but...
Having spoken to Daniel Andrews.
Correct. That in itself is extraordinary, that's the priority.
Yeah.
Well, the object is to hide any evidence, right? Hide all evidence, even if somebody has to die. Hide the evidence first and then help the patient.
What are they thinking about? Are they thinking about the kid who's fighting for his life? Or are they thinking about what this looks like if people see it?
And his Chief of Staff, Brett Curran, where did he end up?
Well, he's now an Assistant Commissioner. So he went back to he was with the police force. He left and was Andrews' Chief of Staff at the time of the crash. He subsequently went back to Victoria Police and got a promotion to Assistant Commissioner. Make of that what you will.
Where's the case up to now?
The defamation case. So it's been delayed. It's a matter of record that it's been delayed. I can't really discuss the reasons why, but that'll come out in the court in February. There's a hearing mid-February, I think, in relation to that, but it has been delayed for a couple of weeks.
Will you come back and talk to us in February?
Sure.
And one series in this podcast?
Well, actually, since we did the podcast, it's had, as I said, 208,000, I think, from a few minutes ago I just checked, which is amazing. We didn't expect anything like that, of course, but people have really jumped on the story and are fascinated by it. And since then, we've had other people come forward with additional information, so we are considering a series 2.
As I said, I think justice will come, whether justice will be in Ryan's favour or not, but certainly there'll be justice in that this, I think, will end up in a court of law with the scrutiny it's never had. Rowan, congratulations. I think you're doing the state a service here.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
And viewers, here's the trailer to the Bike Boy True Crime podcast.
Bike Boy, the True Crime podcast.
January the 7th, 2013. The place, Blairgowrie, a quiet bayside town on Victoria's Mornington Peninsula. Just after 1 p.m, police officer Scott Hanley was called to a near-fatal car crash. A 15-year-old boy, Ryan Muleman, was critically injured after being hit by an SUV. Inside that vehicle was the next Premier of Victoria, Daniel Andrews.
New details have been revealed about former Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews and his wife Catherine's crash with a cyclist. The bombshell review found Victoria Police were involved in an overt cover-up to avoid implicating a political figure in a life-threatening incident.
What happened next would change Australian political history. I'm Rowan Wen, and this is Bike Boy, the True Crime podcast. Moments before Officer Hanley arrived at the crash site, he was told to stand down.
On the day of the crash, I was allocated the job, but then, moments before I made it to the crime scene, I was told to stand down. At the time, it didn't make any sense. But looking back almost 12 years later, sadly, it makes a lot of sense.
But I think it is time for the former Premier to answer questions to this family who, to their credit, have not been dissuaded by the fact that they're up against a very powerful political family, but have continued to fight for justice.
Which is why Scott and a team of investigators have been examining the crash on behalf of Ryan Muleman, the boy who was almost killed that day. And you won't believe what they found out.
What address, please?
On the corner of Ridley Street, Ridley.
Yes.
And Melbourne Road, Blairgowrie.
Near the bike path?
That's correct, yes.
And what's the problem there? Tell me exactly what happened.
We've turned right into Ridley Street and a kid's come flying through on the bike path.
Yep.
And we've hit him.
Peter Muleman, Ryan's father.
I've always believed since the day of the crash that Daniel Andrews was lying.
Why was so much crash evidence ignored? Why was some evidence destroyed? And how did the future Premier of Victoria, Australia and his wife avoid any criminal charges over their involvement in the crash that almost killed a child?
Catherine Andrews maintains they did nothing wrong.
Daniel's spoken about this, I've spoken about this, and so I've got no further comment to add.
Who lied? Who broke laws? And does anyone still need to face criminal charges? Please join me, Rowan Wen, for Bike Boy, the True Crime podcast.
Bike Boy, the True Crime podcast.
The Premier has denied there was any cover-up. When you see those images, you can't unsee them.
When you look back at what my life was, it's been absolute hell.
Did you know you were going to be hit?
Yeah, I knew I was in for it.
Did you think you were going to die?
100%.
Bike Boy, the true crime podcast. The true crime podcast.
The network managed to obtain a copy of the call Daniel Andrews made to emergency services. This is how Daniel Andrews described the crash.
We've turned right into Ridley Street and a kid's come flying through on the bike path and we've hit him.
So you think he was telling the truth? He was telling the truth, yes.
Bike Boy, the true crime podcast. Launches January 7th. Follow now on all podcast apps.